I pulled into the driveway of my beach house after a 6-hour drive, ready for 2 weeks of peace, but 4 cars filled the driveway. Strange voices and laughter poured from my windows. I unlocked the door to find my daughter-in-law standing in my kitchen, surrounded by at least 15 people. She looked at me like I was dirt on her shoe. "What is this old parasite doing here?" she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "We don't have space. Leave." I smiled. She had no idea what was coming. I stood there in my own doorway, my hand still on the knob, trying to process what I was seeing. My beach house, the one my late husband Gerald left me 5 years ago, was completely overrun. Children were jumping on my cream-colored sofa. Teenagers had their feet propped up on my coffee table, the antique one Gerald and I had found at an estate sale in Charleston 30 years ago. The smell of fried food and something sweet filled the air. Beach towels dripped sand and salt water onto my hardwood floors. And in the center of it all stood Jessica, my daughter-in-law of 3 years, holding a glass of wine and wearing a smirk that made my blood pressure spike. "Jessica," I said, keeping my voice level despite the shock coursing through me. "What's going on here?" She took a leisurely sip of her wine before answering. "Family reunion," she said, waving her hand dismissively at the crowd around her. "My parents drove all the way from Arizona. My sister flew in from Colorado. We needed a nice place by the ocean, and Todd said we could use the house." I set my suitcase down carefully. The beach house was my sanctuary, the place I came to remember Gerald, to hear the waves and feel close to the man I'd spent 42 years with before cancer took him. It was a modest 3-bedroom property right on the coast. Nothing fancy, but the location made it worth over $800,000, according to the last appraisal. More importantly, it was mine. My name alone was on the deed. Gerald had made sure of that in his will, wanting me to have security. "I specifically told Todd I was coming this week," I said, trying to keep the tremor out of my voice. "I got time off from the library. I've been looking forward to this for months." Jessica laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the noise of her family. "Todd said you changed your dates." "You're always doing that, Carly. Besides, look around. My family is already settled in. They're not packing up and driving 8 hours back after they just got here yesterday." I felt my chest tighten. I'd been having issues with my blood pressure lately, stress from working part-time at the county library while trying to manage my grief and loneliness. My doctor had specifically recommended this beach trip for rest. I never changed my dates. I have it written in my calendar. I even told my supervisor I'd be gone. "Well," Todd said differently. Jessica turned her back on me and called out to a woman who must have been her mother. "Brenda, can you grab more ice from the garage freezer?" A woman in her late 50s, with the same sharp features as Jessica, walked past me without a word, like I was invisible in my own home. I pulled out my phone and called Todd. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. My hands were shaking now. "He's probably at the gym," Jessica said without turning around. "You know how he is on Saturdays." I did know. Todd was my only child, my son, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died when Todd was just 12. I'd worked 2 jobs to put him through college. We'd been close, or so I thought. But ever since he married Jessica 3 years ago, something had shifted. He called less, visited even less. And when we did talk, Jessica was always there, always listening, always interjecting. I walked through the living room, stepping over beach bags and swim fins, heading toward my bedroom. I needed to lie down, to think clearly about how to handle this. But when I opened the bedroom door, I froze. Jessica's parents had taken over my master suite. Their clothes were hanging in my closet. Their toiletries covered my bathroom counter. The room smelled like someone else's perfume. "Where are my things?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Jessica appeared behind me. "Oh, we moved all that to the garage. Brenda and Frank needed the master suite. They're older, you know. They need the good bed for Brenda's back." Brenda was at least 10 years younger than me. The garage? The apartment above it. There's a perfectly good bed up there. You can stay there if you really insist on not going home. But honestly, Carly, read the room. Nobody wants you here. I walked out to the detached garage, climbed the narrow stairs to the small apartment above. It was meant for storage, and the occasional guest, with a twin bed, a hot plate, and a tiny bathroom. My belongings had been shoved into garbage bags and tossed on the floor. I found the bag with Gerald's photo albums, and my late mother's jewelry box. Items that meant the world to me, just thrown in a pile like trash. That's when something inside me shifted. This wasn't just about the beach house anymore. This was calculated cruelty. This was Jessica trying to erase me, to push me out of my own life. I walked back down those stairs with my spine a little straighter. I found Jessica on the deck, overlooking the ocean, surrounded by her family. "I'm giving you 2 hours," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. 2 hours to pack up and leave. This is my house. My name is on the deed. You're trespassing. Jessica turned to me with an expression of mock concern. "Are you feeling okay, Carly? You seem confused." "I'm perfectly clear. You have 2 hours, or I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." Jessica smiled. "Call them." So I did. I stood on the driveway, away from Jessica's family, and dialed the non-emergency police line. My hands were steadier now. I had the law on my side. This was my property. 2 officers arrived within 20 minutes. Officer Martinez was a young man, maybe 30, with kind eyes. Officer Thompson was older, a woman with gray streaks in her dark hair. I felt a small surge of hope when I saw her. Surely another woman would understand what was happening here. "Thank you for coming," I said, approaching them before they could reach the house. "I'm Carly Henderson. This is my beach house, and my daughter-in-law has brought her entire family here without my permission. I asked them to leave, and they refused." Officer Martinez took out a notepad. "Is your name on the property deed, ma'am?" "Yes, only my name. My husband left it to me when he passed 5 years ago." Officer Thompson nodded. "And the people inside? Their family members?" "My daughter-in-law and her extended family. Her parents, siblings, cousins, about 15 people total." Before the officers could respond, Jessica came outside. Her entire demeanor had transformed. Gone was the sneering woman who'd called me a parasite. In her place was someone soft-spoken and concerned, her eyes even welling up with tears. "Officers, thank goodness you're here," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm so worried about my mother-in-law. She's been having these episodes lately. Confusion, memory problems. My husband and I have been trying to help her, but she gets so agitated." "That's not true," I said quickly. "I'm not confused. This is my house, and I want them to leave." Jessica pulled out her phone. "My husband, Todd, he's Carly's son. He gave us permission to stay here. Look, I have the text messages." She showed her phone to Officer Martinez. I could see the screen from where I stood. There were indeed messages from Todd's number, saying Jessica's family could use the beach house this week. "Those messages don't change the fact that I own this house," I said, feeling my heart rate climbing. "I'm the legal owner." Jessica's father, Frank, came outside then. He was a large man with a deep voice that carried authority. "Officers, I'm a retired school principal. I've known Carly for 3 years now, and I can tell you, we've all noticed the decline. She forgets conversations, she gets dates mixed up. Just last month, she forgot her own son's birthday. That was a complete lie. I'd sent Todd a birthday card and called him. He'd thanked me. She told us 2 months ago that we could use this place this week," Frank continued. "We drove 8 hours from Arizona based on that conversation. Now she's claiming she never said it. It's concerning, honestly. We're worried about her mental state." Officer Thompson looked at me with what I can only describe as pity. "Ma'am, do you live alone?" "Yes, but that doesn't mean anything. I work part-time at the library. I manage my finances. I drove 6 hours here by myself today." "Have you seen a doctor recently about memory issues?" Officer Martinez asked gently. "No, because I don't have memory issues. This is manipulation. Can't you see what they're doing?" Jessica dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "We love her so much. We're just trying to help. Maybe she should go home and rest, and we can sort this out later with Todd when everyone's calmer." Officer Thompson sighed. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but this appears to be a family dispute. Your daughter-in-law has permission from your son to be here. Even though you own the property, we can't forcibly remove family members without going through proper eviction procedures. That's a civil matter. You'll need to contact an attorney. So they can just stay here and I have to leave? My voice cracked. I hated how weak I sounded. I'm sorry, Officer Martinez said, and he did look genuinely sorry. Our hands are tied. This isn't a criminal matter. You need to handle this through the courts. They left. Jessica's sweet expression vanished the moment the police car pulled away. Told you, she said, smiling that cruel smile again. Now go home, Carly. We have a week of vacation to enjoy. I tried calling Todd again. This time he answered. Mom, what's going on? Jessica said you called the police on her family? Todd, they took over the beach house. They threw my things in the garage. She called me a parasite. He sighed. A sound I'd heard more and more in the past 3 years. Exasperation, frustration with me. Mom, Jessica's family planned this trip months ago. You keep changing your dates and creating drama. I never changed my dates. I have it in my calendar. I requested time off work weeks ago. This is exactly what Jessica says happens. You misremember things, then you get upset when people correct you. You're becoming difficult, Mom. The word hit me like a slap. Difficult. Todd, I'm your mother. When have I ever lied to you? You're not lying. You're just confused. Look, Jessica is my wife now. Her family is my family. You need to accept that things are different. Maybe you should just go home and we'll sort out a schedule for the beach house later. I'll call you next week. But Todd, I have proof. I have my calendar. I have the approval from my supervisor. Mom, please. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Jessica says you're misremembering things, and this just proves she's right. Just let them have their week. Stop being selfish. He hung up. I stood there in my driveway, in front of my own house, holding my phone, feeling like the ground had opened up beneath me. My own son had just gaslit me. My own child believed I was losing my mind. I got in my car and drove away, tears streaming down my face. But somewhere between the beach and the highway, the tears stopped, and something harder took their place. If Jessica wanted a war, I'd give her one. I drove the 2 hours back to my regular home, a small ranch house in a quiet neighborhood inland. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. My mind kept replaying. Jessica calling me a parasite, Todd calling me difficult, Officer Thompson looking at me with pity. But I also kept thinking about Gerald. My husband had been a lawyer before he got sick. He'd taught me to document everything, to never go into a situation unprepared. So that's what I did. Sunday night, I couldn't rest. Monday morning, I was on the phone with Martin Hayes at 8 o'clock sharp. Martin had been Gerald's law partner and friend for 20 years. He'd handled Gerald's estate. If anyone could help me, it was Martin. Carly, he said warmly when his secretary put me through. How are you? I heard you were supposed to be at the beach this week. That's why I'm calling. I told him everything, the whole humiliating story. There was a long pause after I finished. Then Martin said something that made me feel validated for the first time in 48 hours. That's harassment and possibly fraud. Let me look into this. Can you come to my office this afternoon? I met with Martin at 2. He'd already pulled up the deed to the beach house, verified that only my name appeared on it. Todd has no legal claim to this property, Martin said, sliding papers across his desk to me. Gerald was very specific in his will. The beach house goes to you, solely. Todd inherits after your death, but until then, he has no ownership rights. So I can force them out? Absolutely. I'll draft an eviction notice today. But Carly, I want to investigate something else. You said Jessica claimed Todd gave permission. I'd like to look at the financial accounts associated with that property. Do you still have the account for utilities and maintenance? I did. I gave Martin access to the bank account I used for the beach house expenses. What he found made my stomach turn. There were charges I didn't recognize. Dozens of them, going back 8 months. Small amounts, usually around $50 or $60, listed as payment processing fees from something called Coastal Vacation Rentals. Martin made a call, then another. Within an hour, he'd discovered something that made my blood run cold and hot at the same time. Jessica had been renting out my beach house on vacation rental websites for the past 8 months. She'd listed it under her own name, claiming to be the owner. She'd been charging $250 per night. According to the rental company's records, the house had been booked solid almost every weekend and holiday. Martin did the math. Jessica had made over $30,000 renting out my property without my knowledge or permission. "This is fraud," Martin said quietly. "Possibly theft. You could press criminal charges." I felt dizzy. "Todd doesn't know about this. He can't know." "Are you certain?" I wanted to be. But after yesterday, after he'd called me selfish and difficult, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Martin printed out everything. The rental listings with Jessica's photo and contact information. Guest reviews thanking Jessica for the lovely beach house. Payment records showing money going directly into an account in Jessica's name. It was all there, documented, undeniable. "What do I do?" I asked. "We send an eviction notice to Jessica's family, giving them 48 hours to vacate, and you decide whether you want to file criminal charges. That money was stolen from you, Carly. At minimum, Jessica needs to return every penny." I thought about it for approximately 3 seconds. "Yes, I want it back. All of it." Martin nodded. "I'll draft the demand letter. But Carly, be prepared. Jessica might not go quietly." That night, I screenshot every piece of evidence Martin had gathered. Then I sent a message to Todd. It was short and direct. "Your wife has been illegally renting my house and pocketing the money. She's made over $30,000 from rental fraud. This is theft. She has 24 hours to return every penny and vacate, or I'm pressing charges. This is not confusion. This is crime." I attached the screenshots. Rental listings, payment records, guest reviews, everything. Then I waited for Todd to respond. 2 hours passed. Nothing. 4 hours. Still nothing. I finally fell asleep around midnight, phone on my nightstand. The call came at 9 the next morning, but it wasn't from Todd. It was from a woman named Diane, identifying herself as a caseworker from Adult Protective Services. "Miss Henderson, we received a report of concern regarding your well-being. I need to schedule a home visit to assess your current living situation and mental state." My coffee cup shook in my hand. "What? Who filed a report?" "Your daughter-in-law, Jessica Henderson, contacted us yesterday evening. She expressed serious concerns about your mental health. She provided evidence of increasingly paranoid behavior, accusations against family members, confusion about financial matters. She mentioned that you called police on her family during a vacation you'd allegedly given them permission to take. Miss Henderson, these are signs that sometimes indicate cognitive decline or dementia." "I don't have dementia. My daughter-in-law is stealing from me." Diane's voice was kind but firm. "That's exactly the type of claim that concerns us." Jessica provided screenshots of text conversations where you apparently gave permission for the rental arrangements, then later forgot. She also has statements from multiple family members who witnessed concerning behavior. "Those texts are fake," she doctored them. "That's something we'll need to evaluate. I have an opening Thursday afternoon. I'll need to visit your home, review your financial records, and do a basic cognitive assessment. Thursday. 3 days away. 3 days for Jessica to spin more lies." "What happens if you decide I'm not competent?" I asked, dreading the answer. "If we determine you're unable to care for yourself or manage your affairs, your next of kin can petition for conservatorship. That would be your son, Todd. He would then have legal authority over your finances and healthcare decisions." I hung up and immediately called Martin. "They're trying to take everything," I said. "Not just the beach house. Everything." Martin was quiet for a long moment. "Then we need to move faster. And Carly, we need to prove beyond any doubt that you're mentally competent. No judge will rule in your favor if there's any question about your state of mind." That's when I realized how brilliant Jessica's plan really was. If I fought back, I looked paranoid. If I provided evidence, I looked obsessed. If I stayed quiet, I lost everything. She'd built the perfect trap. I spent the next 2 days preparing for Diane's visit like I was studying for the most important test of my life. I organized every financial document I owned. Bank statements, tax returns, the deed to my house, and the beach house, Gerald's life insurance paperwork, my will. I created a folder with my employment records from the library, showing I'd worked there reliably for 4 years with excellent performance reviews. I printed my calendar showing the beach house reservation I'd made 3 months ago. I even got a letter from my doctor confirming I'd had a full physical 6 weeks ago, with no signs of cognitive issues. Martin helped me prepare. We practiced questions Diane might ask. What year is it? Who's the president? Can you count backward from 100 by sevens? Simple things that suddenly felt loaded with danger. Thursday came. Diane arrived exactly at 2 o'clock. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with a professional but warm demeanor. She carried a tablet and a leather portfolio. "Thank you for meeting with me, Miss Henderson," she said as I showed her into my living room. "I know this feels intrusive. These evaluations are never pleasant, but our goal is simply to ensure you're safe and able to care for yourself." "I understand. Would you like coffee?" "No, thank you. Let's start with some basic questions." For the next hour, Diane asked me about my daily routine, my health, my finances, my social life. She had me answer the standard cognitive questions. I got every single one right. She reviewed my financial documents, noting that everything was organized and current. "Your records are very thorough," she said, making notes on her tablet. "My late husband was a lawyer. He taught me to keep good documentation. I see that you work part-time at the county library. How long have you been in that position?" 4 years. Since about a year after my husband passed. I needed something to fill my days. Diane nodded. "And this situation with your daughter-in-law and the beach house, can you tell me your perspective?" I took a deep breath and laid it all out. Calmly. Factually. I showed her the evidence Martin had compiled. The rental listings, the payment records, the $30,000 Jessica had stolen. I showed her my calendar, my work schedule, proof I'd planned this trip months ago. "These are serious allegations," Diane said carefully. "Jessica provided her own documentation. She has text messages that appear to show you giving permission for her family to use the beach house and for her to manage rentals. Those messages are fabricated. I never sent them." She also described incidents where you seemed confused. She says you forgot your son's birthday last year, that you got lost driving to their apartment, that you accused her of stealing items that were actually gifts. None of that is true. She's lying. Diane made more notes. "As part of this evaluation, I'm required to interview family members as well. I'll be speaking with your son and daughter-in-law tomorrow." My heart sank. She's very convincing. She'll make me sound crazy. My job is to look at all the evidence, objectively. If you're truly being taken advantage of, we want to help you. After Diane left, I felt a small glimmer of hope. I'd presented well. My home was clean and organized. My finances were in order. I'd answered every question correctly. But then Friday came, and Martin called me. "Carly, I need you to sit down." Saturday. What happened?" "Jessica filed for a restraining order against you yesterday. An emergency temporary order was granted this morning." The room spun. "What?" "She and Todd claim you showed up at the beach house 2 nights ago at midnight, banging on doors and screaming threats. They have testimony from Jessica's parents backing up the story. The judge granted a temporary restraining order pending a hearing. You're barred from going within 500 feet of the beach house and from contacting Todd or Jessica directly." "But I was home Wednesday night. I didn't go anywhere. My neighbor Beth was here. We had dinner together. She didn't leave until 9:30. "Get a written statement from Beth immediately. We'll need it for the hearing. But Carly, this is bad. They're building a narrative that you're unstable and potentially dangerous." "When is the hearing?" "Next Thursday." But there's more. Todd filed preliminary paperwork for conservatorship. If the APS evaluation goes badly, if the judge believes their story about Wednesday night, you could lose control of your finances and property decisions. I couldn't breathe. A week ago, I'd been looking forward to a peaceful vacation at my beach house. Now I was facing restraining orders and conservatorship. I can't let them win, Martin. "I know, which is why I'm recommending we hire a private investigator. If Jessica is this manipulative, this calculated, she's probably done it before. Let me make some calls." That afternoon, Martin introduced me to Sharon Walsh. Sharon was a private investigator, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. "Your daughter-in-law sounds like a piece of work," Sharon said after Martin briefed her. "Give me a few days, I'll see what I can find." Those few days were the longest of my life. I went to work at the library, trying to act normal while my entire world was crumbling. My coworker Beth was wonderful, immediately writing a detailed statement about having dinner with me Wednesday night, confirming I never left the house. But I felt like I was suffocating. Every time my phone rang, I jumped. I stopped sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours a night. Then Sharon called. "Carly, I found something. Can you meet me at Martin's office tomorrow morning?" The three of us sat in Martin's conference room. Sharon spread papers across the table like she was revealing a winning hand in poker. "Your daughter-in-law's real name is Jennifer Mason," Sharon began. "She's been going by Jessica since she moved to this state 4 years ago, and this isn't her first rodeo." Sharon showed us records from Nevada. Jennifer, using the name Jessica, had been married before, 6 years ago, to a man named Craig Thomas. Craig had been a widower with a mother named Patricia, who owned a substantial amount of property. Jessica befriended Patricia, Sharon explained, became very close to her. Then she started driving a wedge between Patricia and Craig, slowly convinced Craig that his mother was becoming forgetful, unreliable. Eventually, Jessica and Craig got conservatorship over Patricia. The mother ended up in a nursing home. She died 6 months later. "How?" I whispered. "Officially, heart failure. But there were suspicious circumstances. An investigation was opened but never completed due to lack of evidence. After Patricia died, Craig inherited everything. Then, 3 months later, Craig filed for divorce. In the court documents, he claims Jessica manipulated him, that she was only after his mother's money." "Where is Craig now?" Martin asked. "Remarried. Living in California. I spoke with him. He's willing to testify about Jessica's pattern of behavior." Sharon slid more papers across the table. "There's more. Jessica has a half-sister named Amanda. They're estranged. I tracked Amanda down. She cut ties with Jessica 5 years ago after Jessica tried to manipulate their own mother's will. Amanda has emails, text messages, documentation of Jessica's schemes going back years. She's willing to testify. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. This is it. This proves she's done this before." "It establishes a pattern," Martin agreed. "But Carly, Jessica, still has Todd convinced. And Todd is the one who can petition for conservatorship. We need him to see the truth." "How?" My voice broke. "He thinks I'm losing my mind." Sharon pulled out one more document. "I also found something else. Something that might be the key to opening Todd's eyes." She showed me bank statements. Not mine, Todd's. Jessica has been systematically transferring money out of Todd's accounts for the past 2 years. Small amounts, usually a few $100s at a time. But it adds up. She's taken over $120,000 from him, including most of his inheritance from his father. I felt sick. Where did the money go? Offshore accounts. Accounts in Jessica's name that Todd doesn't know exist. But here's the really twisted part. Sharon pulled out more documents. Jessica set it up to look like you did it. She created fake financial documents, fake email trails, that make it appear you've been accessing Todd's accounts and transferring money due to confusion and cognitive decline. She framed me for stealing from my own son. If you try to expose her, Todd will think it's just more paranoid accusations from a confused elderly woman. She's thought of everything. I put my head in my hands. Then we've already lost. We can't prove she did this without looking like we're the crazy ones. Martin and Sharon exchanged a look. "Actually," Martin said slowly, "I have an idea. It's risky, but it might be our only shot." That night, I couldn't eat. Beth came over with soup and bread, worried about how thin I'd gotten. I'd lost 12 pounds in 2 weeks. "You have to take care of yourself," Beth said gently. She was my age, a widow like me. We'd bonded over our shared grief. "You can't fight if you collapse." "I keep thinking about Todd," I admitted. "How did I not see this happening? How did I let Jessica come between us?" Beth squeezed my hand. "She's a predator. That's what predators do. They isolate their victims." The next morning, I met with Amanda, Jessica's half-sister. Martin arranged for us to meet at a small cafe 2 towns over, somewhere Jessica would never think to look. Amanda was 37, with kind eyes that looked nothing like Jessica's cold stare. She brought a folder thick with papers. "Thank you for meeting me," I said. "When Sharon told me what Jessica is doing to you, I had to help. I felt guilty for years about not warning people about her." Amanda opened the folder. "Jessica and I have the same mother, but different fathers. I'm 10 years younger. Growing up, I idolized her. I thought she was so smart, so together. What changed? Our mother got sick 4 years ago. Cancer. Mom had a decent life insurance policy and some savings, maybe $200,000 total. Nothing huge, but enough to matter. Jessica immediately started talking about how Mom should change her will, how Mom's friends were taking advantage of her, how I was too young to handle money responsibly. She tried to convince Mom to leave everything to her." Amanda pulled out emails, printed and dated. I have everything. The emails where Jessica coached Mom on what to say to her lawyer. The texts where Jessica badmouthed me and Mom's friends. When I figured out what Jessica was doing, I confronted her. She told me I was just jealous of her success. "What happened with your mother?" Mom saw through it, thank God. She split everything between Jessica and me equally. Jessica was furious. She told me I'd manipulated Mom, that I'd stolen her inheritance. We haven't spoken since Mom's funeral. Amanda showed me more documents. Character references from people who'd known Jessica over the years. Stories of manipulation, lies, destroyed relationships. A pattern so clear it was undeniable. "Will you testify?" I asked. "In court?" "Yes. It's time someone stopped her." Martin worked 18-hour days preparing our case. We had Amanda's testimony, Craig's testimony, from Nevada, Sharon's investigation, the rental fraud evidence, the offshore accounts, my own documentation. It was overwhelming. But it all came down to one crucial hearing, scheduled for the following Thursday, the same day as the conservatorship petition and the permanent restraining order hearing. "Everything happens at once," Martin explained. "The judge will hear the APS evaluation results, the restraining order evidence, and Todd's conservatorship petition all together. We'll have one chance to present our case." "What are our odds?" Martin hesitated. "Honestly, 50-50. Judges tend to side with caution in these cases. If there's any doubt about your mental state, they'll err on the side of protection, even if it means restricting your rights." The night before the hearing, I lay awake until 3 in the morning. I thought about Gerald, how much I missed his calm wisdom. I thought about Todd as a little boy, before Jessica, when we'd been close. I thought about the beach house and all the memories it held. And I thought about Jessica's face when she called me a parasite. At dawn, I got up and wrote a letter to Todd. A real letter, handwritten, pouring out everything I wanted to say. How much I loved him. How proud I was of the man he'd become. How sorry I was that we'd grown apart. How much I hoped he could see the truth before it was too late. I sealed it and put it in my purse. If everything went wrong today, at least he'd have this. Martin picked me up at 7. The hearing was at 9. We went over strategy one more time in his car. "When we present the offshore account evidence," I said, "Todd won't believe it. He'll think we're lying or that I'm confused." "I know," Martin said grimly. "That's the brilliant part of Jessica's plan. She's made sure that every piece of evidence we present will sound like paranoid delusions from an elderly woman. So what do? We trust that the truth is stronger than her lies, and we pray the judge is smart enough to see it." We walked into the courthouse together. Todd and Jessica were already there, sitting with their lawyer. Todd looked tired, older somehow. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Jessica looked perfect. Hair styled, makeup flawless, wearing a modest navy dress. She looked like the picture of a concerned daughter-in-law. I wanted to scream. Diane, the APS caseworker, was there too. She gave me a neutral nod. At 9 o'clock sharp, we were called into the courtroom. Judge Patricia Brennan presided. She was in her 60s, with steel gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "This is a consolidated hearing," Judge Brennan announced. We'll address the Adult Protective Services evaluation, the restraining order petition, and the preliminary conservatorship petition. Let's begin with the APS findings. Miss Caldwell, your report? Diane stood. Your Honor, I conducted a thorough home visit and evaluation of Carly Henderson. I found her home to be clean and well organized. Her financial records are in order. She answered all cognitive questions correctly. She's employed part-time with excellent performance reviews. However, there are concerning allegations from family members regarding confused behavior and paranoid accusations. And what's your conclusion? Judge Brennan asked. Inconclusive, Your Honor. Miss Henderson presents as competent, but the family's concerns can't be dismissed without further investigation. The judge made notes. Let's hear from the family. Mrs. Henderson, you filed the initial APS report? Jessica stood. She'd somehow managed to look even more distressed than before. Yes, Your Honor. This is so difficult. I love my mother-in-law. But she's been changing, making accusations that aren't true, forgetting conversations. We're worried about her. Can you give specific examples? And Jessica did. She spun a story about me showing up at family gatherings confused, making wild claims about rental fraud, accusing her of stealing. She painted herself as patient and loving, Todd as torn between loyalty to his mother and concern for her well-being. She was good. I'll give her that. If I didn't know the truth, I might have believed her myself. Then Martin stood. Your Honor, may I present evidence? Proceed. Martin laid it all out. The rental fraud with documentation, the forged permission texts, the restraining order based on a night when I had a verified alibi, Amanda's testimony about Jessica's history, Craig's testimony from Nevada, the offshore accounts. It was damning, overwhelming, but I could see Judge Brennan's expression. She looked skeptical, like this was all too convenient, too elaborate, like maybe it really was the paranoid fantasy of a confused elderly woman. Todd's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is exactly the type of elaborate conspiracy theory that indicates cognitive decline. Miss Henderson has assembled this narrative from coincidence and misunderstanding. The rental income was authorized and documented. The accounts in question are legitimate. My client and his wife are simply trying to protect a woman they love from her own declining faculties. That's when Sharon stood up from the gallery. Your Honor, I'm a licensed private investigator. I have one more piece of evidence that was just delivered this morning. Judge Brennan looked intrigued. Approach. Sharon handed papers to the judge, to Martin, and to Todd's lawyer. I couldn't see what they were. The judge read in silence for a long moment. Then she looked up, straight at Jessica. Mrs. Henderson, are you currently pregnant? Jessica's eyes went wide. What? Yes, I am. We just found out. We were going to announce it today, actually. That's part of why this is all so stressful. She touched her stomach in a protective gesture that looked rehearsed. Judge Brennan's expression hardened. According to medical records subpoenaed this morning by Miss Walsh, you had a gynecological appointment 4 days ago. The report indicates you are definitively not pregnant and have not been pregnant recently. The courtroom went silent. Jessica's face went white, then red. That must be a mistake. I'm definitely pregnant. I've been having symptoms. The records are from your own gynecologist, Dr. Sarah Chen. They're not in error. Todd turned to look at Jessica, confusion all over his face. Jessica's hands were shaking. I don't understand. Maybe it's too early to show up on tests. I have all the signs. Judge Brennan set the papers down. Mrs. Henderson, lying to a judge is a serious offense. I'm not lying. But Jessica's voice had lost its confidence. The judge called a 30-minute recess. During the break, I saw Todd walk away from Jessica. He stood alone in the hallway, staring at his phone. I wanted to go to him, but the restraining order kept me 500 feet away. When we reconvened, Judge Brennan looked stern. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today. Before I make my ruling, I have questions for Mrs. Henderson. Jessica stood. She'd partially recovered her composure, but there was a wildness in her eyes now. Did you, or did you not claim to be pregnant earlier today? I believed I was pregnant. I must have been mistaken about the symptoms. Did you provide falsified text messages regarding rental permissions? Those texts are real. Carly gave permission and forgot. Did you rent out property belonging to your mother-in-law without her knowledge? She knew. She's confused. Judge Brennan leaned forward. Here's what I find interesting, Mrs. Henderson. Every explanation you're offering requires me to believe that a woman who presents as completely lucid, who maintains employment and organized records, who has multiple witnesses supporting her account, is actually severely confused. While you, who have been caught in at least one outright lie today, are the truthful one. Does that seem reasonable to you? Jessica's mouth opened and closed. Then something in her snapped. She's old, Jessica said, her voice sharp and rising. She's taking up space and resources that young families need. She doesn't need a beach house. She barely uses it. She should be in a retirement home, not hoarding property and making everyone's lives difficult because she's bitter and alone. The courtroom went dead silent. Todd stood up. Jessica, what are you doing? But Jessica was unraveling. She's a parasite. She's lived long enough. Why should she keep everything when we're struggling? We have plans. We need money. She's just going to die anyway and leave it all to you, so why make us wait? Judge Brennan's gavel came down. That's enough. Mrs. Henderson, sit down. But Jessica wasn't done. She turned on me, all pretense of concern gone. You should have just left when I told you to. You should have accepted your place and gotten out of our way. But no, you had to fight back. You had to make this difficult. Jessica. Todd's voice cracked. She whirled on him. Oh, grow up, Todd. Your mother has been in the way since the day we got married. She has money and property, and we deserve it more than she does. I've been patient. I've played the loving daughter-in-law. I've done everything to isolate her and make you see her as the problem. And it was working until she got nosy and found the rental listings. Todd looked like he'd been struck. You've been using me. Of course I have. You were an easy mark, a mama's boy with inheritance prospects and no spine. Did you really think I loved you? I watched my son's heart break in real time. Judge Brennan's voice cut through the chaos. Bailiff, please escort Mrs. Henderson out of my courtroom. I'll hear closing arguments without her presence. Jessica was screaming as they led her away, calling me names I won't repeat, promising she'd find a way to make me pay. Todd stood frozen in the middle of it all, tears streaming down his face. And I realized we'd won the battle. But the cost was going to be enormous. After Jessica was removed from the courtroom, Judge Brennan called a 15-minute recess to let everyone collect themselves. I sat in my chair, Martin beside me, watching Todd through the window as he paced the hallway outside. When we reconvened, Jessica's seat remained empty. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Mr. Henderson, Judge Brennan addressed Todd directly. Do you wish to continue with the conservatorship petition? Todd looked up. His eyes were red. No, Your Honor. I need to withdraw all petitions against my mother. Are you certain? You don't need to decide this minute. I'm certain. His voice was hollow. I've been blind. I've been manipulated. I've hurt my mother terribly, and I need to make this right. Judge Brennan nodded. Very well. Let the record show that all petitions filed by Todd Henderson on behalf of or in support of Jessica Henderson are hereby withdrawn. Now, as to the matters before me, she looked at her notes. The evidence overwhelmingly supports Miss Carly Henderson's claims. The rental fraud is documented. The forged documents are proven. The restraining order was based on false testimony. I'm dismissing the restraining order immediately and ordering an investigation into potential criminal charges against Jessica Henderson for fraud, forgery, and perjury. She turned to me. Miss Henderson, you have my apologies. It's clear you've been the victim of a calculated scheme to defraud you of your property and autonomy. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm also ordering that Jessica Henderson and all members of her family vacate your beach house property within 48 hours. Failure to comply will result in immediate arrest for trespassing. Do you understand? She directed this to Jessica's lawyer. He nodded quickly. Yes, Your Honor. I'll communicate this to my client. Furthermore, I'm referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution. The evidence suggests multiple felonies. As the hearing concluded, Todd approached me slowly. The restraining order was lifted, so legally we could speak now. But emotionally, there was a chasm between us. "Mom, I don't even know what to say." I pulled the letter from my purse and handed it to him. "Read this when you're ready. Not now, later, when you've had time to process." His hands shook as he took it. "I called you selfish. I called you difficult. I believed her over you. She's very good at what she does," I said quietly. "You were her victim too. I should have known. I should have seen it." "Todd, we'll talk, but not today. Today we both need space." He nodded and walked away. In the following days, things moved quickly. Jessica's entire family packed up and left the beach house within 24 hours. They left the place a disaster, broken furniture and stains everywhere, but they left. The police investigation moved forward. Detectives found more than anyone expected. Jessica had been running rental scams in 3 different states. She had multiple fake identities. There were other victims, people she'd defrauded over the years. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Mills, called me in for an interview. "Your case broke it all open," she told me. "Jessica got sloppy with you because she thought she had you cornered. The evidence you and your lawyer gathered is solid enough to prosecute. What about the money she stole from me? The $30,000 from rentals, the money she took from Todd? We're working on asset seizure. Some of it's already been recovered from her accounts. You'll get restitution." 2 weeks after the hearing, Jessica was arrested. Bail was set at $200,000. Her parents tried to post it but couldn't raise the full amount. She stayed in jail, awaiting trial. I drove to the beach house for the first time in a month. The drive felt longer than usual. When I pulled into the driveway, I sat in the car for a while, just looking at the place. It was mine again, but it felt tainted somehow. I walked through the empty rooms. Jessica's family had destroyed things out of spite, I think. The antique coffee table had a leg broken off. There were wine stains on the carpet. The master bedroom walls had holes punched in them. I should have felt angry. Instead, I just felt tired. I started cleaning. It was something to do with my hands while my mind processed everything. I scrubbed floors and patched walls and made lists of what needed replacing. Beth came to help me after a few days. She took one look at the damage and hugged me hard. "Insurance will cover most of this," she said. "And the rest, you can afford to fix." "You won it all back, Carly." "Then why don't I feel like I won?" "Because the thing she broke that mattered most wasn't the furniture. It was your relationship with your son. Todd didn't call for 3 weeks after the hearing. I didn't push. I knew he needed time to unpack what Jessica had done to him, how thoroughly she'd manipulated and used him. But Martin did get good news. The vacation rental company cooperated fully with the investigation. They'd already frozen the accounts where Jessica had deposited the rental payments. Between recovered funds and restitution orders, I'd eventually get back about $40,000, more than the $30,000 she'd originally stolen because of interest and penalties. Jessica's trial was set for 4 months out. The district attorney's office was building a strong case. They had victims from Nevada, Arizona, and California willing to testify. They had documentation of at least 7 different schemes over a 10-year period. "She's looking at serious prison time," Martin told me. 6 to 10 years, possibly more if they can prove all the charges. I should have felt satisfaction. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for Todd, who'd been used and manipulated. Sad for all Jessica's other victims. Sad for the time I'd lost feeling hurt and betrayed. Finally, on a Thursday evening 5 weeks after the hearing, Todd called. "Mom, can I come see you?" "Of course." He arrived an hour later. He looked thinner, older. He'd grown a beard. We sat in my living room with coffee, both of us nervous. "I read your letter," he said. "About 50 times. I meant every word." "I know. That's what made it so hard to read. Because you still love me after everything I did. You're my son. That doesn't change." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand how I let Jessica control me so completely. The therapist says it was textbook psychological manipulation. She isolated me from you gradually, made me doubt my own perceptions, convinced me you were the problem. It's what abusers do. I'm an adult. I should have seen it. I should have questioned it." His voice broke. I chose her over you, Mom, my own mother, and she didn't even love me. She was just using me to get to your money and property. Todd, you can't carry that. Jessica is responsible for what Jessica did, not you. But I am responsible for what I did. I called you selfish. I gaslit you about changing dates when you had proof you didn't. I sided with her when she threw you out of your own house. I filed for conservatorship to try to take away your rights. Those were my choices. He was right. They were his choices, and they'd hurt me deeply. I forgive you, I said. But forgiveness doesn't mean things go back to how they were immediately. We need time to rebuild trust. I know. I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy together if you want. Just, please don't give up on me. I won't. But Todd, this is a process. It's going to take time. He nodded, wiping his eyes. Can I help you fix up the beach house? I saw the pictures Martin sent. It looks pretty bad. I'd like that. So that's what we did. Over the next few weeks, Todd came to the beach house on weekends. We worked side by side, repairing drywall, repainting, replacing broken furniture. We didn't talk much at first, just worked in companionable silence. But gradually, we started talking. Really talking. He told me about his marriage, how Jessica had been sweet and loving at first, then slowly changed. How she'd criticized his friends until he stopped seeing them. How she'd made him feel guilty every time he wanted to visit me. Classic isolation tactics. I told him about the loneliness after Gerald died, how much I'd missed having him around, how Jessica's cruelty had felt like the final loss in a series of losses. We both cried. We both apologized. We both forgave. Jessica's trial happened in early June. Todd and I both attended, sitting together in the gallery. We watched as victim after victim testified. Craig from Nevada, telling about how Jessica had manipulated him into turning against his mother. Amanda, Jessica's half-sister, describing years of lies and schemes. Other people Jessica had defrauded over the years. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, emails, financial records, testimony from law enforcement, forensic accounting reports, showing exactly where the money had gone. Jessica sat at the defense table, looking small and furious. Her lawyer did his best, but there was nothing he could do against the mountain of proof. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing 2 weeks later, Judge Harold Martinez listened to victim impact statements. Craig spoke about losing precious final months with his mother. Amanda spoke about family relationships destroyed. I spoke about the fear of losing my autonomy, my home, my son. Then Judge Martinez sentenced Jessica to 8 years in prison and full restitution to all victims, totaling over $400,000. Jessica's parents were also charged as accessories for knowingly receiving stolen funds and helping Jessica maintain her schemes. They took plea deals for probation and community service. When it was all finally over, I felt like I could breathe fully for the first time in months. 6 months after Jessica's sentencing, I stood on the deck of my beach house watching the sun set over the ocean. The house was completely restored now, better than it had been before. Todd had helped me pick out new furniture, paint colors, decorations. It felt fresh, new, mine again. Todd was inside grilling dinner. We'd fallen into a pattern of spending weekends here together, rebuilding our relationship slowly and carefully. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments of tension, times when I remembered how easily he'd believed Jessica's lies about me. But we were working through it, one honest conversation at a time. His therapist had helped him understand that he'd been in an abusive relationship. Jessica had used classic techniques of control and manipulation, and Todd had been vulnerable after losing his father. He'd wanted someone to love, someone to build a life with, and Jessica had seen that vulnerability and exploited it. The legal aftermath had taken months to fully resolve. The vacation rental company had returned all the fraudulent earnings, plus penalties, totaling $42,000. The court-ordered restitution meant I'd eventually recover the money Jessica had stolen from Todd's accounts too, though that would take years as she made payments from prison. My lawyer Martin had helped me establish better protections for my assets. The beach house deed was recorded with additional security measures. My financial accounts had extra authentication requirements. I'd even updated my will to include specific provisions protecting against future fraud attempts. But the real work had been emotional. I'd spent months in therapy myself, processing the trauma of what Jessica had done. The betrayal hadn't just been from her. It had been from Todd, too, my own son believing I was losing my mind rather than trusting me. That cut deepest of all. Dr. Patricia Wilson, my therapist, had helped me understand something important. You're allowed to forgive and still feel hurt, she'd said. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel close to Todd again. Other days the pain will feel fresh. Both are valid. She was right. Some weekends with Todd were wonderful, full of laughter and easy conversation. Other times, I'd look at him and remember him saying, "Maybe you should just go home," when Jessica had thrown me out of my own house, and I'd have to excuse myself to cry in private. But we were making progress. The beach house had become a place of healing for both of us. We'd created new memories here, better ones. Todd had learned to cook Gerald's famous fish tacos, and we'd spent hours on this deck perfecting the recipe. We'd watched storms roll in from the ocean. We'd talked about everything from childhood memories to Todd's plans for the future. He'd quit his job in sales and was training to be a counselor, specifically working with abuse victims. If my experience can help even one person recognize the warning signs earlier than I did, he'd said, then maybe some good can come from all this. The ripple effects of Jessica's case had spread wider than I'd expected. After the trial made local news, 3 more victims came forward with stories of her scams. The district attorney had reopened those investigations. Jessica's sentence would likely be extended. But more positively, I'd received dozens of letters from people who'd read about the case, elderly people who'd been targeted by family members or caregivers, people who'd been told they were confused or paranoid when they raised concerns, people who'd felt isolated and powerless. I'd started responding to those letters, sharing what I'd learned, encouraging people to document everything, to trust their instincts, to fight back even when it seemed hopeless. One woman in Texas had been in almost the exact same situation with her daughter-in-law. She'd read about my case and had known what to do. She'd hired a lawyer immediately, documented everything, and stopped the scheme before it got as far as mine had. She'd written to thank me, saying I'd probably saved her home and her relationship with her son. That letter meant more to me than any monetary restitution ever could. Beth had encouraged me to think about writing a book about the experience. Other people need to hear this story, she'd said. You could help so many people. I'd been considering it. Maybe someday. For now, I was focused on healing and rebuilding. I'd also become active in local elder advocacy groups. I spoke at community centers and senior centers about protecting yourself from financial exploitation. I shared the warning signs of manipulation. I emphasized the importance of maintaining your own financial independence and keeping thorough documentation. Some people called me brave. I didn't feel brave. I felt like I'd simply refused to be erased. Because that's what Jessica had tried to do. Erase me. Make me small and forgettable and powerless. Convince everyone, including my own son, that I was just a confused old woman taking up space. But I wasn't. I was Carly Henderson. I'd survived losing the love of my life to cancer. I'd raised a son on my own. I'd built a career and a life and a community. I had value that wasn't diminished by age or circumstance. And when someone tried to steal that from me, I'd fought back with everything I had. The sliding door opened behind me. Todd came out carrying 2 plates of fish tacos. "Dinner's ready," he said, setting the plates on the outdoor table. "I think I finally got the seasoning right." I took a bite. It was perfect. Gerald would be proud. Todd smiled, but his eyes were sad. I wish I could tell him I'm sorry, for everything, for letting Jessica come between us, for not seeing what she was doing. He'd forgive you, just like I have. Do you really forgive me, Mom? Completely? I thought about that carefully. I'm choosing to forgive you every day. Some days it's easier than others. But yes, I forgive you. Because you're my son, and I love you. And because you're doing the work to understand what happened and make sure it never happens again. He nodded, wiping his eyes. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this up to you. I don't need you to make it up to me. I just need you to be present, to be honest, to be my son. We ate in comfortable silence as the sun finished its descent. The ocean turned from blue to purple to black. Stars began to appear. I got a letter from Jessica's lawyer last week, Todd said eventually. My stomach tightened. What did she want? She wants me to visit her in prison. Says she wants to apologize and explain. Are you going to go? No. My therapist says it's likely just another manipulation. Jessica trying to maintain some connection, some control. I'm done giving her any part of my life. Good. But I am curious about one thing. Do you think she ever actually loved me? Even a little bit? I considered lying, telling him what he wanted to hear. But Todd needed truth now, not comfort. I don't think Jessica is capable of love. I think she's capable of performing love when it serves her purpose. But real love? The kind that wants the best for someone even when it costs you something? No. I don't think she has that in her. He was quiet for a long time. Yeah, that's what I think too. We finished dinner and cleaned up together. Todd headed back to his apartment around 9, promising to come back next weekend. After he left, I walked through my beach house slowly, room by room, the living room with its new furniture and fresh paint, the kitchen where I'd learned to cook alone after Gerald died, the master bedroom where Jessica's parents had so carelessly discarded my precious memories. It was all mine again, truly mine. No one could take it from me. I thought about everything I'd learned over these terrible months, about the importance of documentation, about trusting your own instincts when everyone tells you you're wrong, about the strength it takes to stand up for yourself when you're tired and scared and feel completely alone. But I'd also learned about the complexity of forgiveness, about how relationships can be repaired, even after profound betrayal, if both people are willing to do the hard work, about how justice, while important, doesn't actually heal the wounds we carry. I'd learned that age doesn't make you weak or foolish or less deserving of respect. If anything, I was stronger at 65 than I'd been at 40. I knew myself better. I knew what mattered. I wouldn't be pushed aside or silenced or made small. Most importantly, I'd learned that your voice matters. No matter how old you are, no matter who tries to silence you, no matter how powerless you feel in the moment, you have the right to stand up, to fight back, to demand to be heard and believed and respected. Jessica had called me an old parasite. She'd tried to convince everyone, including my own son, that I was confused and difficult and in the way. But I'd proven her wrong. I'd gathered evidence. I'd hired experts. I'd stood in that courtroom and told my truth, until someone listened. And I'd won. Not just the legal battle, though that mattered, but I'd won back my dignity, my home, my relationship with my son, slowly but surely, my sense of self. I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the deck under the stars. The ocean whispered its eternal rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, a lighthouse swept its beam across the water. Tomorrow I had a speaking engagement at a senior center in the next county. I'd tell my story to a room full of people who needed to hear that it's never too late to fight back, never too late to stand up for yourself, never too late to refuse to be a victim. And next week, I had coffee scheduled with a woman from Florida who'd reached out after reading about my case. She was facing something similar with her stepson and his wife. She needed advice. She needed to know she wasn't alone. I was building something from the ashes of what Jessica had tried to destroy. A voice for people who felt voiceless. A reminder that age brings wisdom and strength, not weakness. Gerald used to say that the measure of a person isn't how they handle easy times, but how they rise after being knocked down. I'd been knocked down hard, humiliated, betrayed, nearly destroyed. But I'd risen. And I was still rising. Jessica was in prison, and would be for years. Her schemes were exposed. Her name was ruined. She'd lost everything. And I was here, in my beach house, free and strong and victorious. I thought about the woman in Texas who'd written to thank me. The victims from Jessica's other schemes who'd finally gotten justice. The people who'd attend my talk tomorrow and hopefully recognize the warning signs in their own lives. Some good had come from this nightmare after all. I raised my glass to the ocean, to Gerald's memory, to Todd's healing, to my own stubborn strength, to refusing to be erased, I whispered, to fighting back, to surviving. The ocean answered with the crash of waves on sand, eternal, unchanging, strong, just like me. I have a question for anyone listening to this story. Have you or someone you know ever experienced manipulation or exploitation by a family member or someone close? How did you handle it? What would you do differently if you could go back? Your experiences matter, and sharing them in the comments might help someone else who's going through something similar right now. If this story resonated with you, I'd be grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Stories like mine need to be heard, and your support helps them reach more people who might need to hear them. And please, share this with someone who might benefit from knowing they're not alone in facing family betrayal or manipulation. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here, for caring, for taking the time to hear about the darkest period of my life and how I found my way through it. Remember, you're never too old to fight for what's yours. You're never too powerless to stand up for yourself. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be silent when everyone wants you to disappear. Take care of yourselves. Protect yourselves. Document everything. Trust your instincts. And never, ever let anyone make you doubt your own mind. Until next time,